I'm sorry. Am I disturbing you?
No.
This happened about 15 years ago. At the time, I was dating around and I had a few creepy encounters during that time, but this guy takes the cake. He was an acquaintance my brother had met at a bar a few times and was showing him around the local area because he was new to the country. My brother set us up because he was apparently desperate for a girlfriend, and I guess I was pretty desperate too, because we did go on a date together. That date was probably the worst first date I've ever been on. I showed up to the restaurant we were meeting at. He was late, which isn't a huge deal, so I let it slide, and then we went to sit down. To be honest, I knew from the start I wasn't really attracted to him, but I thought I would be polite and see if we had a nice night. He started off politely too. He held the door for me, pulled my seat out. It wasn't really necessary, but it was nice anyway. Then, when we were sitting down waiting for someone to come and take our orders, I was reading the menu, and he started talking about how much his fiancée would have liked this place. That took me by surprise, and naturally I asked about his fiancée. He revealed that he had another fiancée before moving over her, but he had just left her to move to another country. I asked why they had broken up, and he said they never really broke up as such, but he got fed up with her nagging him about various things and just moved away. I really didn't know what to say after that, so I changed the subject and started asking him more about himself and where he used to live. He wasn't really very forthcoming. Eventually, our waiter turned up and started talking to us. To clarify for the next part, our waiter was a man of color, and he had an unusual accent for our area. So my date stares blankly at him for a while, then turns to me and says, "You understand this guy?" I said yes, I could understand him, before telling him our orders. After he left, my lovely date continued to shock me. He said, "I wouldn't normally leave ordering to the lady, but that brown guy talked really weirdly and I didn't get it." Wow, way to tell me you're a racist and a sexist in one breath, dude. Again, I was speechless for a few moments before I got angry with him. I don't remember exactly what I said, but it was something along the lines of, "Well, I'm not a lady, so I can order for myself just fine, thanks. And why make racial remarks?" Then he got annoyed with me and told me he wasn't being racist, he just wasn't used to that kind of person where he was from. I pointed out that he wouldn't have met me if he just stuck to people he was used to in his own country. He calmed down and told me he wouldn't want that because he's glad he met me. Honestly, I found that a little weird, given that I didn't see any way to say that this date was going well, and he didn't know me very well at all. But I decided since we had ordered, I should stay, get my meal, and try to redeem the evening before I left and never saw this man ever again. So I answered some of his questions about me, basic getting to know me and small talk stuff for the most part, then started on about my previous dates. If I was a virgin, whether I would be willing to wait until marriage and then be submissive to my husband or not. It was at this point I realized that I was most likely on a date with a religious bigot, hence the misogyny, weird attitude to sexual stuff, and all his other closed-minded bullshit. So, I settled for a none of your business, now I need to leave. I checked the prices on the menu and left money for my half of the food plus a tip on the table and got up to leave. He said he didn't see why I was being unreasonable with him, as though this had been a normal date, but then told me that I couldn't expect him to take my money because that was an insult to him. Fine, dude, you want to pay for a meal that's not getting eaten? You pay for it. I'm not that mad about spending my money that I'll stop you. So I took my money back and walked straight out. I just assumed that yes, it was an awful evening, and I wouldn't have to see him again. I wasn't even back to my house when my brother started texting me, asking where I was because my date had called him in tears, saying I had gone off for no reason, and he didn't know where I was or what to do. Thankfully, my brother was pretty calm about it and assumed that I had left for a reason. I explained everything to him, and he was pretty surprised too. After that night, we both tried to cut contact. My brother stopped meeting up with the guy, and we both blocked the Facebook account we had for him too. My brother had also blocked his number because he would not stop texting him, asking him about me, alternating between being really worried about me to saying he hoped I dropped dead. Then he started making endless different accounts on social media to harass us. He told my brother he didn't know why we weren't talking to him. He posted a bunch of weird posts describing me in detail before going on to call me a lot of horrible names. He kept blocking them and moving on. Then, the harassment got worse. He either found me and followed me at some point, or got my address from a friend and turned up one day, standing around outside of my house, asking to come in and speak with me. When I refused to let him in, he grabbed my arm to prevent me from going in and started to tell me that he didn't want to let me go because I would never find a man who would love me like he did, and that if I walked away from him again, I would regret it one day when I was old and lonely. He went on and on like this for ages and ages while I tried to pull my arm away from him, before I finally got fed up of this and yelled at him to get off me and leave me alone, and then kicked him in the shin. He let go of my arm but cursed at me and said I was being ungrateful to him, but I took my opportunity to run inside and lock my door. He started banging on my door and then trying to push it inwards. I was getting both upset by this man and just super fed up of his presence in my life, so I grabbed my phone and called the police, telling them that someone was trying to get inside my house. I was told someone would be with me soon, but 20 to 30 minutes later, there was no sign of them anywhere, and I was getting quite upset because this man was forcing my door, and I thought the lock was going to break soon. So I called my brother, who lived nearby, just because I knew he would come, even though I wasn't sure he would be able to help much. About 15 minutes later, my brother turns up, and after a brief conversation I didn't quite hear outside, the pressure was going off the door. I waited a few minutes and then texted my brother to see what was going on and if it would be all right to look outside now. He didn't reply, and the next thing I heard was the police turning up. I went out to see what was going on. Apparently, after my initial call, they had received another call from a neighbor saying there were two men fighting on my lawn. I guess this was my brother and the guy, since my brother looked out of breath and pretty shook up, and the guy wasn't around anymore. My brother explained to the police that he had tried to stop the man from getting into my house, and that the man had hit him. I told my side of the story, and some of my other neighbors were asked what they had seen and were able to tell them about his attempts to get in. Plus, there were marks on the outer side of the door where he had tried repeatedly to get in. The police went to look for him, and a few weeks afterward I was called and told that they thought they had found him, but they wanted me to look at the suspected person. It wasn't the same man. I didn't hear anything else, and I don't know what happened to him. I didn't see him again, so I'm probably safer after 15 years. Regardless, I don't ever want to see him again. Sometimes I find myself drowning in the memories of paranormal experiences that still linger in the back of my head from day to day. Some things just simply can't be unseen. I think that spirits, demons, or whatever they may be, are beings that no living person could ever understand. In this case, seeing is believing is a good way to simply word it up for you non-believers out there. Maybe a family member, a friend, or even some stranger has told you that they have seen a ghost, and you've thought it was ridiculous. I think anyone could understand why that is. My life was pretty ordinary when I was a young kid. After my encounters, every part of my life changed. The way I thought, the way I saw life. I changed for the better, and suddenly the things that remained unanswered in my head made sense to me. I was blind, but now I can see. There are things that have happened to me that I've never been able to compare with anything else. Things that would make your spine rattle, but every day I muster up the courage to move forward and forget, although, as I said, some things can never be forgotten. My family owns an old house on the North Shore of Scotland, in a place that not many have even ever heard of. I spent a lot of my childhood in this town, and it's called Melness. It's an isolated place that isn't shown on many maps, but I can bet that anyone who visits will not have a hard time remembering the place. It was mostly highlands, fields, and beaches, probably the most Scottish place anyone could go. I can still smell the salty Atlantic Sea, and the water was pure like it had never been touched, and I can still see the washed-up shipwreck that lay on the sandy shore. My dad had always told me terrifying stories about Melness and the weird things that happened there when he was just a boy. He told me one specific story that really grabbed my attention. It was about a cave on the beach that is also known to be haunted. As he tells it, he was on the beach one day playing, as there's not much else to do in Melness. My dad, being brave, decided to go inside this cave. And to the right, when he was inside, there was a very dark corner, pitch black. There was a hole inside the wall of the cave, a hole so dark that no man could ever be brave enough to enter. And he was scared, but he brushed it off and just assumed that if there was anything there, it would be an animal. So, instead of going near it, he just decided to throw some sand in it to try to prove to himself that there was nothing there. It's okay, he thought, as nothing happened. But that was only until a few seconds later. Sand had then been thrown back at him. He was alone, and he didn't stay in the cave. He said he's been back to the cave occasionally, but the one thing that really spooks him to this day is that he never saw that hole again. I experienced my first paranormal event in the house in Melness. All of my family have seen and heard some weird, unnatural things in the house, and inside it wasn't very scary looking. In fact, it's very homey looking until you spend your first night there. As you walk through the front door, the bathroom is what you first see, and it was under the stairs. There were 3 bedrooms and 1 bathroom upstairs, and downstairs to the right was the kitchen, and to the left, the living room. In the living room, there was an old red curtain that separated it from the conservatory, and that's where I first encountered something that was somewhat terrifying. One night, we were all asleep. Me, my sister, my dad, and my papa. I was pretty young, maybe around 6. I'd woken up and dragged myself downstairs to the bathroom, and when I had gotten to the bottom of the stairs, I couldn't help but notice that the curtain that led to the conservatory was blowing as if the outside door was open. And it was. It was wide open, which was very strange as we lock all of the doors before we go to bed. But me, being young and oblivious to odd things that went on inside the house, I just closed the door, locked it again, and went to the bathroom and then back to bed. The next morning, I was awoken to the sound of my dad calling me from downstairs. I got up and went to see what he was shouting about. When I got there, I said, "Daddy, what is it?" And he pointed to the conservatory and asked if I was up in the night. I slipped past the curtain and realized that the door and all of the windows were wide open again. I was gobsmacked and just explained to him that it wasn't me, and I told him about how I had come down and shut the door. Then, that night, a similar thing happened. Every single kitchen cupboard door was left open. I was young, but I knew none of this was a coincidence. The first time I had ever seen a spirit wasn't in the house, in fact. It was in a rather new house I was living in with my mom and my stepdad. I've always believed that if a spirit was following me, it followed me from Melness. As you walked into this house, you were immediately in the living room, and there was a door separating the bedrooms and bathrooms. During this occurrence, it happened in the middle of the night, just as I was going to the toilet again. The bathroom door faced the living room, and I passed by it looking through the living room door. You couldn't really see through it properly as it was textured glass, but you could still see shapes, like the couches and the table. But the one thing that caught my eye in the living room still gives me shivers down my spine. I've never seen anything more terrifying in my life. It was a tall black figure, almost like someone was wearing a robe or a dress. As I looked in, I could tell that the figure had turned to me. I screamed at the top of my voice. I thought I was dead. I ran to my mum's room straight away and lost my toenail under the door in the process. I jumped in between my mum and my stepdad, still screaming. I was terrified. My stepdad went through the living room, and the black-cloaked figure that I had seen with my very own eyes was gone, like it had never been there. But as I walked into the room behind him, I felt a disturbing chill that filled the air. I just wished that someone else had seen it so people hadn't thought I was crazy, though I never doubted myself for a second. I never had thought that the second time I would see a ghost, it would be the same dark figure. But it was. I knew right away. The tall black silhouette that I had already seen in my living room had come back to me again. Only this time, I was back in Melness. It must have been around 2005, and I was 9 years old. I had asked my stepbrother to come downstairs with me so I could go to the bathroom, and he waited outside the bathroom door. It just made me feel a lot more safe. But I still was scared. I couldn't even look in the mirrors at night or even take a glance out the window, as I was scared of what I might see looking back at me. As I was washing my hands in the sink, I suddenly heard a banging and some screaming at the door. It was my stepbrother, and he had obviously seen something that had scared him. I opened the door in a flash, and the first thing that caught my attention was the figure that I had seen before, standing outside the front door. We both hid in the bathroom, sitting in the bathtub, blocking the bathroom door with a set of drawers and anything else we could find. For about 3 hours we hid there, not knowing what might be lurking at the other side, just a bit of wood. The only thing that was separating me from the thing that I feared most was a bit of mahogany, and I thought maybe it was a good thing I was seeing it again, to reassure myself that it wasn't my immature imagination. I was just glad I had someone there to see it, too. It was just what I needed. From that day on, I was sure it was following me, but what was it? What is a who, but why? A while after that, I went to the library with my friend to do some spiritual research, but I found no information that was important to me. It was only recently that I have read some things that explained what my strange black shadow might be. I read about shadow people and demons, but I find all of that really strange. I've never been one to believe in demons. There was just still not enough information to explain to me what was going on. There was one last time that I saw my ghostly follower. At the start of May last year. It had been 9 years since I had last saw it, and sometimes I'd almost forgotten, and I had finally felt at peace. Until that day. I was staying at my friend's house, and I was sitting on the back corner of his bed. It was against the wall to the right, and in front of me was the television. To the left was a large mirror on the wall. He'd gone out of the room to go for a shower, and I was watching something on TV, when I got a strange itch on my back. I suddenly turned my head towards the mirror, and I saw it. It was right behind me. In the mirror, I saw the spirit I thought had left me, and it was right behind my back. I had never had a more terrifying moment of my life until then, and it was worse. I could tell that it had touched me. In the end, my friend thought I was nuts, and we lost contact, but now it seems that whatever is happening to me, whoever or whatever is following me, might never stop. It was only a couple of months ago that I moved into my flat with my boyfriend. It was maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I decided I'd had enough, decided to write out this short story about my hauntings. I've been running in circles as I attempt to address questions for which I have no answers, and it was the other week that I felt maybe it's going too far. My boyfriend was working in Glasgow, which is a half-hour train ride away. It was about 9 o'clock at night, and it was dark. It was just me and my cat in the house, and I was doing my makeup, getting ready to go out. I was holding my small mirror in my hand in front of me, when I heard my cat make a really weird noise. I went through to the bedroom, and she looked terrified, hiding behind the blinds. You weird cat, I thought to myself. I looked around to see what may have disturbed her. I opened the walk-in cupboard for her, which needs to be pulled and pushed really hard as it gets jammed. Then I went back to the living room and sat down on my couch, leaving the bedroom door open for me to see through. I carried on doing my makeup, looking in my small mirror while putting on foundation. Suddenly, there was a huge, very loud bang as if a door had actually been slammed shut. I looked up, and it was the cupboard door, and I could clearly see my cat sitting on the bed staring at it. This is when I got really scared, and I looked back down at my makeup mirror to close it and put everything down. There was a huge crack going through the mirror. I didn't know what else to expect. I didn't know what else to do except shout at my cat and take her outside, which I did. I told my boyfriend everything, and it was only a few days later that the windows started unlocking by themselves. It's been really scary to experience this so often. I'd appreciate anyone's help or comments.